Monza, Bahrain, Jeddah. No, I'm not talking about places with shocking human rights, you idiot. I'm talking about the only 3 tracks where the Dutch wall magnet hasn't binned it. So where did it all go wrong for the Dutchman? In Monza, he subs in for Albon on one of the Williams' best tracks and manages to grab a P8 finish. Then, Twitter erupts saying he deserves an F1 seat. Now, this is a prime example of why we don't listen to people on Twitter, because now we move on to this season. In the Middle East, he secures 2 incident-free P14s. Then in Australia, he was running in P14 again until he was rear-ended by the American. Meaning, without the American, it would have been 3 P14s. Now this doesn't sound too bad, until you realise Yuki had 2 P11s and 1 P10 in these 3 races. And the fact that De Vries is 6 years older means up to this point he was already underperforming. But it's the next 2 races where his ability to fuck it up really shines. In Baku, he goes out of Q1 after fucking himself into the barriers at turn 3. Then in the sprint decides he can't get beaten by his teammate if his teammate is dead and tries to murder Yuki into turn 3. But he's not done in Baku just yet. And during the race, he makes a complete cock-up of the chicane, meaning he DNF'd for the 2nd time in as many Sundays, while his teammate secured another P10. Shout out to Matthew for the correct prediction there. And now we're in Miami, and he starts the weekend just as he left the last one, bottom of the pack in all 3 practices. But then for the first time this season, he out-qualifies his teammate. This could finally be his race, where he proves himself as a serious driver and why he deserves his seat in F1. He locks up into the back of Norris, ruining both of their races, and comes home in P18. Oh, for fuck's sakes, man. It's honestly taking the piss. With Liam Lawson available to them, and him currently slapping about the Super Formula Series, unless De Vries strings together a number of points finishes, his time in F1 is going to be just like me losing my virginity. Short and a bit confusing. Now, speaking of the Miami Grand Prix, this of course was the big talking point of the week. And with Charles Leclerc deciding he was a sleeper agent activated by a blue runoff, the grid was set for a very interesting race. But we all forgot about one thing. Yes, of course he won it. We were in a country with human rights. Of course Sergio Perez was going to be useless. And no one else can keep up with that rocket ship. So with the race for the lead wrapped up by lap 21, our attention turned to the midfield, where Kevin Magnussen had his shoe in hand and was slapping Charles Leclerc into submission, rounding out an overall disastrous weekend for the tax-dodging Monegasque.
Have you ever wanted to commit tax evasion?
Further up the track, Alonso was so bored he was actually watching the race while taking part, complimenting Lance's move into turn 1. But the real issues didn't even happen during the race. The real issues came before it, where they had will.i.am conducting an orchestra and some twat hyping up the drivers who he's never heard of to a crowd who don't even know what an apex is. You can see why this went a bit wrong. The only 2 drivers who seemed like they actually enjoyed it were the American and the attention whore, while the rest of the drivers looked like Bernie Ecclestone had just shown them a picture of his knob.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
But somehow, it got even worse, as during the grid walk, Martin Brundle and Sir Jackie Stewart, you know, the 3-time world champion and F1 royalty, wanted an interview with Federer. So Jackie went through a barrier to go and get him, and the security guard tried to stop him. I'm sorry, but this is the equivalent of letting Salt Bae onto the pitch to celebrate Argentina winning the World Cup, and not letting Aguero through. It doesn't make any sense. Luckily, George Russell was there, and with his only defensive move of the day, told the security guard to shove a fat rod up his arse. Hopefully. By far the best moment of the day was when they panned up in the shot of the pool, and with all the Instagram cunts you couldn't really make anyone out, except Jabba the Hutt. You could just see him waddling through the crowd, and he was so fucking massive. He was the only one you could actually make out. That was just funny to me. I don't think that has any relevance anywhere. But at least him being in the pool space meant he wasn't on the grid walk. Family! So the race was a bit dull and the build-up was vomit-inducing. Alonso managed to grab another podium while Red Bull took 1-2 again. So what does this mean for the season? Well, Red Bull are going to win the Constructors, Verstappen will wrap up the championship by the time they reach Vegas and be paraded around like a show pony, and Nick de Vries will probably be gone in the summer. So, on to the news. Andretti are officially applying for F1 entry this week, but given all the fuck-ups the governing bodies produce on a regular basis, they are probably going to be told to get stuffed. The price for the food at the Miami Grand Prix actually made me want to die, with a glorified fruit salad being $250. Probably still less of a scam than the ticket prices. Elon Musk was hanging about in the Red Bull garage, although he should have been in the Aston Martin one with Stroll, because they're both there because of Daddy's money. Stephanie hasn't stopped talking shit and wants to fill a third of the calendar with sprints. He says it's for his bank account. Nope, sorry, he says it's for the fans. Twat. It has also been announced that Brad Pitt is going to be driving on the track at Silverstone to shoot some scenes for his upcoming F1 movie. Can't wait to see him set a faster lap than Logan Sargent. And finally, Russell called Verstappen's reaction to the crash pathetic, saying he spat his dummy out, and while I do agree with George, I think he needs to remember a few years ago.
Grass, of course.
Well, he believes that it was Valtteri's fault.
In a bit.